We begin with the removal and reservation era, 1828 to 1886, with key laws, policies, and events. In 1830, the Indian Removal Act established the U.S. policy of relocating Native American tribes from east of the Mississippi River to lands in the west. 1838, Trail of Tears, causing thousands of Cherokee deaths. The Trail of Tears denotes the forced displacement and systematic removal of approximately 60,000 Native Americans from the 5 civilized tribes by the United States government between 1830 and 1850. The 1876 Battle of the Little Bighorn, or Custer's Last Stand, was an armed conflict between the combined forces of the Lakota Sioux, Northern Cheyenne, and Arapaho tribes and the 7th Cavalry Regiment of the United States Army. Let us continue with the Assimilation and Allotment era, 1887 to 1932. In 1887, the Dawes Act authorized the federal government to divide tribal land into individual allotments. The 1890 Wounded Knee Massacre was an event in which nearly 300 Lakota individuals were killed by United States Army soldiers. This event marked a significant moment in the broader context of federal policies toward Native Americans. In Lone Wolf versus Hitchcock, 1903, the court ruled Congress had the power to revoke treaties. In the 1924 Indian Citizenship Act, U.S. citizenship is granted to all Native Americans born in the U.S. Now let us examine the Reorganization and Termination era, 1934 to 1967. Between 1953 and 1968, the federal government revoked recognition for many tribes during the Termination era. This was a U.S. federal policy aiming to assimilate Native Americans by ending the government's trust relationship with tribes, eliminating federal services, and terminating the sovereign status of over 100 tribes. In 1956, the Relocation Act encouraged tribal members to migrate to urban areas such as Chicago, Denver, and Los Angeles. The act provided vocational training and assistance, with the stated goal of reducing poverty, but often led to unfulfilled promises and significant urban hardship. Let us continue with the Self-Determination era, 1968 present. The 1968 Indian Civil Rights Act extended many provisions of the U.S. Bill of Rights to tribal governments, thereby ensuring individual rights such as free speech, due process, and equal protection under tribal law. The American Indian Movement, AIM, established in 1968, focused on confronting police brutality, racial profiling, indigenous civil rights, assert tribal sovereignty, and promote cultural revitalization throughout the United States. In 1969, activists occupied Alcatraz Island, aiming to reclaim it as indigenous land by citing the 1868 Treaty of Fort Laramie. The occupation sought to establish a Native American university, cultural center, and museum to raise public awareness about indigenous land rights. During the 1970 occupation of Mount Rushmore, activists sought to reclaim the Black Hills, which had been guaranteed to the Great Sioux Nation but were subsequently seized by the U.S. government after gold was discovered there. The 1975 Indian Self-Determination and Education Assistance Act formally recognized tribal governments and authorized federal agencies to contract directly with federally recognized tribes to administer federal programs. The 1978 American Indian Religious Freedom Act was enacted to protect and preserve the inherent rights of Native Americans, Eskimos, Aleuts, and Native Hawaiians to believe in, express, and practice their traditional religions. The Indian Child Welfare Act, 1978, aimed to prevent the separation of Native children from their families and tribes. The Indian Gaming Regulatory Act, 1988, provided a legal framework for tribal gaming, strengthening economic sovereignty. The Native American Graves Protection and Repatriation Act of 1990 required federal agencies and museums to return Native American cultural items and human remains to lineal descendants or tribes. The Tribal Self-Governance Act of 1994 expanded tribal control over federal funding and decision-making. In conclusion, we examine ongoing challenges: voting rights, continued efforts to combat state-level legislation that restricts access to voting in Native communities, cultural representation, successful advocacy by groups like the National Congress of American Indians to remove offensive Native American mascots from professional sports teams, justice and equality, continued focus on addressing issues such as missing and murdered Indigenous women, police brutality on reservations, and the long-term impacts of boarding schools.
This concludes Native American rights.